All right, y'all. Week 13 preview. Missouri is traveling to Norman, Oklahoma to take on the Oklahoma Sooners, coming off a big win against Alabama, 8-2. Missouri 7-3. 12 p.m. Eastern, 11 o'clock native time, Central Time Zone. ABC prime time. Line right now is 9.5 for Oklahoma. The over/under is 42.5. Hunter, thoughts on this matchup when you think about what Oklahoma brings to the table and what Missouri brings to the table?
We talked before the Alabama game with Oklahoma that they control their destiny. They're sitting on the outside looking in. All you got to do is win all your games and you're in the playoffs. You had Alabama, then this game with Missouri, LSU the following week. One box down. You check that box. You beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Should be feeling pretty good because you know what you did well in that game. It's the DNA of this Oklahoma team on what they do well. It's this defense. You could bring that into this game and challenge Missouri that same way. Now, Missouri, good win last week against Mississippi State. And I think from a standpoint of this offense, you can put up 40-plus points with your third-string quarterback because of the ability of your running team. So I think there's maybe some boost to morale from Missouri knowing that you didn't score 15, 20 points. You went out and put on an offensive show. So this is a good game for these two teams. Oklahoma right now really having a lot to play for because they're sitting now inside that prospective bracket more than likely.
Yeah, definitely a lot to play for, and I'm sure Oklahoma fans are really excited, and Missouri fans should feel pretty good about this win against Mississippi State. 7-3 on the season. We heard Drink talk about how, as fans, you should really appreciate winning football games. The whole goal shouldn't be making the playoffs, but that's talk from coaches that are not in playoff contention. We did a preview last week of the Oklahoma-Alabama game, and I'm going to toot my own horn. I picked Oklahoma to win that game, so Sooners fans, if you're watching, I was lockstep with y'all. But it was a perfect recipe for them to win that game. And you talked about it where they did what they do best. Stop the run. Fourth in the country in stopping the run, 82.2 yards per game, number one in the SEC. Let's talk about the company that they're in for that stat, right? It's Texas Tech's number one, Miami's number two, Ohio State 3. Even behind them is Texas, JMU, James Madison sitting there at 8th. This run defense is doing a ton to keep them in games. We saw it against Alabama. They held Tennessee to 68 rushing yards with Sean Bishop. And so these last two games, defense has been the pillar. It's allowed them to, stay in these games. But there's still opportunities to be better on offense. And this Missouri game is an interesting opportunity for them to show it.
Yeah, and hitting first on that piece you talked about with the Oklahoma defense, it's been talked about so much. I don't want to continue to harp on the fact of their pass rush. The pass rush has been the primary focus of, media covering this team. And it's because it's, while they're fourth in run defense, they are number one in sacks per game. Solo at the top, 4 per game. Missouri, not too far behind. They have their own ability to rush the passer. Where the run defense is really, really important in this game, there's not going to be a lot of passing attempt from Missouri. If you think that Matt Zollers is going to run out there and throw 30 times in this game, I got a oceanfront beach house in Missouri to sell you. It's not going to happen. It's going to be a ground game. So that's a huge matchup here, is how this run defense can go against Ahmad Hardy. Ahmad Hardy had 300 last week against Mississippi State. Can Missouri get enough consistent reps out of their running backs to be able to move the ball down the field? I think they could have a 1 or 2 here and there that break free for a first, some additional yardage. It's just, how does that play all game?
Yeah, it really does tell the story, and it's like they being Oklahoma does so much good on defense, rush defense, pass defense. You talked about it with Ahmad Hardy, 25 attempts. You mentioned the 300 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns. This Mississippi State defense, their opponent last week, 15th in the SEC in rushing yards allowed. We saw Nate Frazier gash them up for Georgia. We obviously saw Ahmad Hardy. But basically, Missouri, to me, when I watched the game, they were just like, well, we'll let Zollers throw the ball 12, 15 times. He had 2 passing touchdowns. Just keep running the ball. When you're averaging 12 yards a carry, why wouldn't you run the ball? I mean, that's a first down every time you touch the rock. So, this Missouri team the last 2 weeks has had a 80-point plus PFF rushing rating, right? They've played this past week Mississippi State. They obviously played an opponent the week before that. It's good, or they played Texas A&M. So, I mean, even against Texas A&M, they had 207 rushing yards. They didn't necessarily win the game, 38-17 loss. the Texas A&M rushing defense is 7th in the SEC. So they're not like a bad rushing defense. They've improved this season. Ahmad Hardy could do some damage in this game, and that's like going to be the number one factor for them to have a chance to beat Oklahoma.
Yeah, his performance needs to be good to his standards, not good to the country standards. 110 yards is something we look at running backs, a great game. That's not going to be necessarily enough here. It's been hard to hold him. It's kind of a unstoppable force versus a movable object in this game where Ahmad Hardy is very hard to bring down. His worst game, just under 3 yards per carry against Alabama. The Auburn game, not necessarily. That was his toughest two stretch, but it was still 110 yards between those two games, 2 scores. It's going to be the key matchup in this game. Now, I don't want to talk too down on Matt Zollers. Still kind of harping on this Missouri offense here. They scored 49 points. He was 8-15, 2 touchdowns. I think they brought the game a little bit more conservatively to him, where let your playmakers make the plays. Is there any opportunity to replicate that here, or does Oklahoma shut him down? Do you have some confidence in Matt Zollers after last week, more than you did probably in the A&M game?
Yeah, I definitely have confidence in Matt Zollers, especially if they're able to establish a run alongside him. I think the key is going to be protecting him. You talked about the sacks that both of these teams have been able to accumulate. So it's interesting stat-wise. Oklahoma and Missouri are both tied for allowing 22 sacks offensively. So that's tied for 10th in the SEC. If they can keep Zollers upright, I think that's going to be the key for him to be able to, no more than probably 25 pass attempts, but kind of get some of these guys involved with Kevin Coleman, Marquise Johnson, Brett Norfleet at the tight end position to, hold time possession and to give Missouri the best chance to win this game.
Yeah. Now let's flip the script a little bit. There's a lot on Oklahoma defense, Missouri offense. We flip it to the other side. You mentioned, Oklahoma offense leaving a little bit to be desired. They got it done versus Alabama, outgained in nearly every category. They haven't necessarily been clicking to the level of a championship caliber team. They've done what they needed to do to win games. Part I want to hit on is, how Oklahoma's defense has helped their offense. A defense can propel an offense in 3 main ways, right? Getting them more reps by getting them back on the field, getting turnovers for potentially a pick 6 like we saw last week for Oklahoma. But the third one that's most important in this game is field position. Your defense has a chance to play that field position game for you. And an interesting stat for Oklahoma, they are 5th in the nation on defensive starting field position, 20th in offensive starting field position to start drives. Missouri 73rd and 94th in that same stat. What this is Oklahoma is putting themselves in position to have shorter offensive drives and putting their opponents in positions to have to go 80+ yards. That's how I think this game plays out. I think this is a field position game for Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge stat, right? I mean, if you got to drive 60 yards to get a touchdown versus driving 80 yards or driving 50 yards, that makes it much easier to get a field goal. We saw the kicker in this game have 3 field goals made, 3 field goal attempts. If they can play that game, you get the lead, and now it's harder for the other team, in this case Missouri, to get in field goal position, to be able to score, and it becomes this battle throughout the game of, well, they have the lead. It's not really a huge lead because to your point, offensively, there's some gaps here. 3 for 13 against Alabama on 3rd down. 138 passing yards from Mateer. We haven't seen a passing touchdown from Mateer in the last 2 weeks. Don't get me wrong. He had a rushing touchdown in this past game,
Good one.
which again, you start on the 40-yard line. You just need a couple first down conversions. What I liked was that he was able to spread the wealth around. We saw Jermichael Carter get involved. We saw Javonte Gibson, Isaiah Sategna, Jaron Kanak. He's making these passes, but it's not as pretty as it looked earlier in the season. But I think that formula, just keep trying to attempt, keep spreading the ball around. Good things will happen, especially to your point when you're starting the ball on the 50-yard line or the 40-yard line.
Yeah, that's been a key for them. And to talk on their special teams, you mentioned their kicker. They're on, looking at some independent stats. They're 12th in special teams efficiency, counting punt returning, counting kickoffs, counting, the field goal team. They are one of the better teams in the country at that. They're able to hit those long field goals. Something Missouri, due to the injury bug that they've got that's kind of spread around this team, is not necessarily the top tier at being able to do. They have replaced Blake Craig pretty well with Robert Meyer. Just still, from that trust level, he's missed a couple ones that, should have probably been in, whereas Tate's a little bit more trustworthy. So, looking at this game here, It's going to be a defensive game to me. You know, we talk about them every week, not to just continue to harp on them every week, but Zion Young, Damon Wilson, we haven't mentioned them yet. Great pass rushers that can apply some of that pressure to Mateer, cause some of those mistakes. Keep an eye on them. Like we said, two of the best sack teams in the country, Missouri 8th, Oklahoma 1st. This is a defensive game. The over-under in this game reflects that 42.5. I think that is likely the case. R. Mason Thomas probably back for Oklahoma in this game too. I expect a low-scoring bout here.
Yeah, R. Mason Thomas, their leading sack getter, will be a huge return this game. We saw he was doubtful and out in the past game against Alabama. I mean, for Missouri, like you mentioned, you already talked about it. Damon Wilson, 7 sacks in the season. Zion Young, 5.5 sacks. Darius Smith, 4 sacks. Chris McKellen, 3 sacks. They had 4 to 5 sacks against Mississippi State. They only had half a sack or 1 sack against Texas A&M, but Texas A&M has the #1 passing protection offense in the SEC. They've only given up 10 sacks in the year. Not the case again for Oklahoma, giving up 22 sacks in the season. It's going to be a defensive battle. I expect some big time major momentum swings with third down stops, with sacks like you mentioned. So I agree with you. I think the over under is the perfect number at 42.5 here.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts and overall prediction here?
Again, my key in this game is how you control the field position. If you're Oklahoma, you know, if you're Missouri, it's how do you incorporate maybe some interesting looks to, you know, get the first down. It's going to take some creativity. I don't think this is a team that you can muscle with your big back like you have for some of your other teams like Mississippi State. So looking at this one, I think it's going to be low scoring. I don't expect either team to really feel comfortable at any point in the game. I got Oklahoma 20, Missouri 10. Low scoring bout. Some crazy things happening, like you're saying, maybe a turnover or 2 here and there. And it continues to propel Oklahoma into the playoff conversation, and they start to sit a little bit more pretty going into LSU.
Okay. All right. I like it. I like it. I think I definitely like that prediction. I'm just excited. #1 rushing offense in the SEC with Missouri versus a #1 rushing defense in the SEC Oklahoma. I see a safety happening in this game. And I'm going to say it's going to be 23-15 Oklahoma. I think that they defensively they'll do enough, they'll score enough. I could see a safety happening here. You know, call me crazy, but my final prediction is 23-15. You know, Oklahoma Nation, you've been riding with us here, and Missouri fans, you've been watching us as well. You know, Oklahoma fans, you see I got the Cowboys hat on here. I already know a lot of y'all are Cowboys fans, but you know, we really love making content like this and been loving the season so far. Like Hunter mentioned, you win your games out, you control your destiny. And for Missouri, you can still achieve another 10-win season if you win these next 2 games and win your bowl game, which is says a lot about your head coach.
And they're not out of conversation with that. So, you know, Missouri, you still have, you know, your far shot. You need a lot of help, but there's things there. So this will be a good game. We're looking forward to it. This is probably one of the bigger games of the week in the SEC. You know, you have that pre-Thanksgiving kind of week of some weaker matchups, but you know, this is 2 teams having a good matchup here. Looking forward to it. Hit that like button, subscribe button. Be sure to, you know, be here for all the content that we release around these teams and the rest of the SEC. I'm Hunter Ziesman. He's Randall Ledet Jr. Love talking college football, and until next time.